2023 was pretty divisive for movies. On the one hand, you had smash hits, both critically and at the box office, like Across the Spider-Verse and Barbenheimer. But on the other hand, you had movies that bombed harder than Hiroshima and Nagasaki, like The Flash and Indiana Jones 5. But I'm not going to focus on the garbage that came out in this video. I'm going to cover every good movie I saw in 2023, in the order they came out. So of course, I'm gonna have to start off with... The f*** do you want me to say? They did it again!
That's all, folks.
Nope, not doing that again. But genuinely, that's my thoughts in a nutshell. The absolute legends over at Sony Animation gave us one of the most well-animated, well-written, and well-voice-acted movies I've ever seen. Again! Legit, this is one of the best movie sequels of all time. If you disagree with me, I hope your entire family dies in a I very strongly disagree with you. Everything is just perfect, from the amazing way they recap the events of the first movie to help the audience remember what happened, to the gripping character struggles that both Miles and Gwen both face respectively. Gwen in particular is given a lot more screen time and things to do in this movie than the last one, and I couldn't be happier about it. Her inner conflict about revealing her identity to her dad, and the way her dad turns on her once he finds out, are absolutely devastating and handled beautifully. Specifically, the scene where her dad finds out about her identity and the colors are changing from shot to shot to reflect her emotions is just mwah, chef's kiss. Not only do Gwen's struggles work well on their own, but they also play a part in Miles' struggles with his own inner conflict about revealing his identity to his parents. Gwen is one of the only people who can really understand Miles' struggles and empathize with them, which is both a good and bad thing. On the one hand, it's a good thing because Miles is someone he can confide in about his problems that he can't share with anyone else. But on the other hand, it's a bad thing because Gwen's the only one he feels like he can confide in, and when she's not in his life for a year and a half, he has no one to open up to. It's also bad because of Gwen's own struggles with revealing her identity to her dad. Because since she had a traumatic experience after she opened up to her dad, she projects her fears onto Miles, and that his parents might react in the same way. And while that experience was certainly traumatic from her dad's overreaction, it turned out to be a good thing in the end, as her dad came around and embraced her for who she was, and she no longer had to hide her secret from him. So it's bad that she projected those fears onto him, as he could have told his parents his secret and saved him from all the conflict he goes through the movie with his family. But it's fine because it gives us some powerful scenes between Miles and his parents. Miles' struggles with his parents are also super compelling. In the first movie, we got to see how close him and his family were, and seeing them slowly break apart because Miles can't tell them his secret is heartbreaking. A specific example of this is during Jeff's promotion party, where he gives a speech about his motivations to be a police officer, and he mentions Miles and how he does all of this for him, and he makes a toast to Rio first, but when he looks around for Miles to toast to him as well, he can't find him because Miles is busy with Spider-Man stuff. And when Miles finally does show up to the party and his parents confront him about being late and asking why, he can't tell them the truth. It's powerful stuff that shows the problems with Miles not revealing his identity to his parents. So yeah, the writing in this movie is as good as, if not better than the first. But there's plenty of other great things to talk about, such as the antagonists. First, let's talk about the Spot. The Spot is an unexpectedly excellent villain. He's unexpectedly excellent in that from all the pre-release promotional stuff such as the trailers, he was kinda made out to be a joke. Hell, most people thought he would be a side villain, not the main villain, until it was directly confirmed by Sony Animation that he would be the main villain, which left a lot of people, myself included, wondering how they'd make him work. But my god did they make him work. Spot isn't like a lot of other villains, in that instead of being a menacing threat right off the bat, he's a weak goofball who slowly becomes more powerful throughout the course of the movie, to the point of being a legitimate threat to our protagonists. It's also done in a believable enough way to explain how he gets more menacing throughout the movie. So yeah, the Spot is an excellent villain, and I can't wait to see what they do with him in Beyond the Spider-Verse. Our other antagonist is Miguel O'Hara, aka Spider-Man 2099. Miguel's a really interesting character in that he's essentially trying to do the right thing through the wrong methods. Like, yeah, he should have researched a bit more to make 100% sure that canon events are the only factor to keep a universe stable, but after what he went through, you can't really blame him. The man just wanted a family, but by swapping places in another universe with a dead version of himself, he caused that entire universe to collapse, killing everyone, including his family. If something that seemingly harmless caused an entire universe to collapse, then you can't blame him for thinking that canon events must happen no matter how painful they are to maintain the stability of the Spider-Verse. So him trying to make sure that Miles' canon event of his dad dying happens isn't malicious. He's just trying to make sure the Spider-Verse doesn't collapse on itself. And although Miguel is portrayed as an antagonist, I wouldn't say he's in the wrong for trying to stop Miles. In fact, Miles choosing to save one person over every universe makes me understand Miguel's motivations even more. Now that's not to say I agree with how Miguel treated Miles prior to him escaping the Spider Society's HQ, but the guy's just trying to atone for his past mistakes, so no universe ever shares that same fate. So yeah, the antagonists in this movie kick ass. And so did the music, animation, and voice acting. I'll start with music because I don't have much to say on it other than Metro Boomin and Daniel Pemberton are kings. Daniel Pemberton somehow outdid himself and created one of the best movie soundtracks of all time, again! There's so many incredible tracks, such as Gwen's theme, Miguel's theme, Miles' theme, the train chase scene theme, etc. And Metro Boomin gave us an album which, while I don't think is as good as the first movies, still has some bangers. Annihilate, Am I Dreaming, Calling, and Self-Love all slap. Now let's talk about the animation, because I don't have much to say on it other than how? How do you top the greatest animated movie of all time? Going into Across the Spider-Verse, I wondered if they could even top what they did before, but I was stupid for thinking something so dumb. The animation in this movie easily tops the first movie, and is 1,000,000,000% the most gorgeous animated movie of all time. Every frame in this movie deserves to be hung in the goddamn Louvre. Like, get the Mona Lisa out of it, because this movie tops that Da Vinci shit any day. The art styles in this movie are just pure eye candy, whether it be Spider-Gwen's world, Spider-India's world, or Spider-Punk's animation style, which may be one of the coolest things I've ever seen on the big screen. The animation in the first movie was already peak, but they somehow made it better by giving us more unique and eye-catching art styles for each universe, which also in turn gave each universe more personality, and fully utilized the concept of the multiverse. And last but not least, we gotta talk about voice acting, because oh god. The voice actors for a bunch of characters from the first movie return, and no shit they're all amazing, but the newcomers' performances are so good that they make every scene hit that much harder. Like Jason Schwartzman as a Spot?
Yes! 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 Yes!
Daniel Kaluuya as Spider-Punk?
Woo! Yeah, baby!
And Oscar Isaac as Spider-Man 2099?
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
These guys give outstanding voice performances and just add that much more personality to both their characters and this movie. So again, shocker, this movie is a masterpiece and somehow topped the first movie. The one and only main complaint I've seen about this movie is that it's a part 1 and ends on one of the dirtiest cliffhangers I've ever seen that has you foaming at the mouth like you got rabies for part 2, which I get. I get being upset that you can't witness the rest of the story and gotta wait for what looks to be a while now. But aside from the cliffhanger and this movie being a part 1, this movie is simply perfect in every other regard. The animation, writing, voice acting, music, and direction are all top tier again. This movie is pretty much guaranteed to win the Oscar for Best Animated Movie, and maybe even the Oscar for Best Picture. Like, what else has a chance of winning Best Animated Movie? Elemental? But yeah, this movie is a 10 out of 10 masterpiece that somehow exceeded its masterpiece of a predecessor and should be added to the National Film Registry pronto. I'm honestly sad I couldn't make a video on this masterpiece when it came out, but I've been meat riding for the last 8 minutes or so whatever. If you haven't seen it already, you deserve the death penalty, and if the government won't execute you, then I will. So go watch it. 10 out of 10 masterpiece, can't recommend enough. At this point, I'm convinced Tom Cruise is one of the greatest action movie stars of all time. The dude is 61 and is still giving us amazing movies with amazing stunts, performed by himself. Yeah, at 61, Tom Cruise is still doing badass shit like riding a motorbike off a f***ing mountain and then parachuting just 500 meters before he hits the ground. What an absolute icon who, between Top Gun Maverick in 2022 and the banger that's Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, can't seem to miss. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning is yet another action-packed, espionage-filled, and suspenseful as all hell home run for this franchise. This movie keeps you on the edge of your seat with an intriguing storyline, suspenseful set pieces, interesting likable characters, and of course, absolutely godly stunts. My lord, do the stunts in this movie leave you absolutely speechless in a way that not many other movies can. I've already talked about the motorbike stunt, but the car and train chase scenes respectively are insanely action-packed and so much fun to watch. As great as this movie is, I do have a few gripes with it. For starters, I don't like the weird rivalry between Benji and Luther. They're both likable and enjoyable characters, so making them have some sort of weird rivalry over who's the better tech dude on the team is kinda weird and doesn't really feel organic. It's not that big of a deal, but it does rub me the wrong way that they're having this petty rivalry instead of focusing 100% on the mission and helping Ethan. The second and only other somewhat notable issue I have is with the villain. I don't think it's a secret by this point that the villain in this movie is a super powerful AI who's ridiculously overpowered, being able to control any electrically controlled thing, be it cameras, cars, radios, etc. I'm not kidding when I say there's a scene in this movie where the AI takes control of one of the team's radios and manipulates the team by impersonating their voices. Like, that is just insanely overpowered. Though to be fair, they do make logical decisions to avoid being monitored or manipulated by the AI. But overall, this movie just slaps and is one of the most deserved blockbusters of last year. All Tom Cruise and co have to do is stick the landing with Part 2 to solidify this franchise as one of the greatest, if not the greatest action movie franchise in history. 9 out of 10, go watch it if you haven't. Now on a completely different hand, there was a pair of movies last summer that the internet has memed into oblivion.
Test sites getting wrecked, Manhattan Project, innovation, nukes are our creation, Oppenheimer, bomb designer.
One of which I was pretty interested in, and the other I had pretty much no interest in watching. I'll let you guess which one was which. Now, the movie I was interested in watching turned out to be an amazingly directed, incredibly captivating story of one of the most infamous events in American history. But surprisingly, the other turned out to be an incredibly creative and funny acid trip of goofy fun, with some surprisingly nice themes and moments in it. Let's talk about the Goofy movie first. Oppenheimer's ridiculously captivating, considering the movie can be boiled down to 3 hours of men in suits talking about science and politics. Christopher Nolan makes every scene interesting and suspenseful through some very stylized direction for this movie. He does have his usual shtick of scenes transitioning from the present to the past and vice versa, but I think it's handled very well here, as it's done to keep an element of mystery as to why Oppenheimer is in trouble with the government and who is responsible for it. The man himself, J. Robert Oppenheimer, is a really interesting character who you can tell has a genuine passion for science and the genius to bring his theories to fruition. Seeing his inner conflict grow throughout the movie between his passion for science and his moral compass because the gradual realization of what his creation will do is enthralling to watch. Cillian Murphy absolutely kills it as Oppenheimer, and I genuinely don't think anyone else could have given such a captivating performance. The cast is honestly stacked. With so many big names, it's insane! Some notable standouts aside from Cillian Murphy are Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, and especially Robert Downey Jr. The man has possibly the best scene in the whole movie, and is easily a frontrunner for Best Supporting Actor at this year's Oscars. But who cares about that? Because this movie has Josh and Roderick in it, like, come on! What else could you ask for? There's really only one big problem I have with Oppenheimer, which is pretty obvious, I think. Despite Cillian Murphy's claims that they were essential to the plot, I personally don't think we needed 3 scenes with Florence Pugh. I get that they gave a situation for some natural exposition and character building, but Christopher Nolan couldn't have just had them talk when they were fully clothed. It's just really unnecessary, and doesn't do much except take up runtime and jump scare parents watching with their kids 3 separate times. I have a few smaller issues, like the runtime being 3 hours, the cast being way too big with too many characters, and the flash forwards being a little confusing at times, with it not being completely clear where we're being shown some of these scenes at times. But the movie is so good that I don't really mind those issues when compared to the movie as a whole. Because aside from that one big issue, this movie is incredible, with compelling characters, an insanely interesting story, a mystery that ties in perfectly with the story and makes later revelations stunning, and one of the best audiovisual experiences the world has ever seen. I give it 9.5 Hiroshimas out of 10.
Stop playing with him, Riot.
As for the movie with one of the most infamous events in American history, Barbie is for the most part a colorful blast, and a movie I didn't expect to enjoy anywhere near as much as I did. Margot Robbie as Barbie and Ryan Gosling as Ken were perfect casting, with Ryan Gosling delivering one of my absolute favorite movie performances of last year. From a technical standpoint alone, this movie is one of the best movies from last year. The set design and costume design are amazing, with every location and person in Barbie Land bursting with color and personality. I legitimately can't remember the last time I saw a live-action movie this colorful and stylish. Like, of course, animated movies are the kings of that stuff, but over the years, live-action movies have slowly been losing color, so it's nice to see a movie this bright and visually appealing. This stuff is backed up by great direction and editing, the latter of which I normally don't pay much attention to, but the editing in the Barbie Land scenes really stood out to me, especially the transition scenes between Barbie Land and the human world. Now, remember when I said this movie has one of the most infamous events in American history? I wasn't entirely joking about that, since this movie caused an absolute firestorm online, with a lot of people labeling this as
Woke.
feminist propaganda that only exists to say women good, men bad. But I don't really think that's the case. Ken in this movie is as good as, if not better, a character than Barbie herself. His character arc of coming around to realize that he doesn't need to be in a relationship with Barbie to be worth something, and that being himself is enough, is great. Now that being said, do I think this movie conveys its feminist themes in a subtle, well-executed manner?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
This movie does convey some stuff well, like Barbie Land being an inversion of the patriarchy with women dominating society, and the men getting frustrated by not being equal with them. I think it's a nice way to convey that neither gender should have more power or influence than the other, and the best way to ensure peace and happiness is for everyone to be equal. However, that does not mean that all attempts at social commentary are subtle or well executed. There's a character in this movie that goes on a 2-minute monologue about how hard it is to be a woman, and in a movie so goofy 90% of the time, it feels really out of place. The monologue itself is good, but it feels like it's from a completely different movie. I feel like there was definitely a way for this movie to convey the struggles women go through in a more subtle or nuanced way. And I know this movie's capable of this because they already did it. Overall though, this movie is a great time. Fun characters, funny jokes, great performances, some of the best costume and set design of the whole year, and one of the greatest scenes in movie history. I give it an 8 out of 10. Last but not least, we have a last minute addition to this review, as I only saw this movie like 2 weeks ago, but the moment I finished it, I knew it had to be on this list. Godzilla Minus One was my biggest surprise of 2023, coming out of nowhere and catching everybody off guard. A low-budget monster movie was the last thing anyone expected to be good, but my god was it amazing. This movie has one of the most beautiful stories in any movie this year, giving us a surprisingly well-done cross between a monster movie and a war movie. This movie shows us the pain, anguish, and despair that war inflicts on everyone involved, but also shows us the hope and kindness that can sprout from even the most desolate places, whether it be a young woman taking care of a baby that isn't her own, or a young man taking on the role of a provider and putting his life on the line to take care of his found family. And then you have the monster aspect, where the king of monsters himself, good old Godzilla, who is easily one of the most terrifying and hateable characters from last year. This may be the most terrifying version of Godzilla we've ever seen on screen, and the scene that really convinced me of this is when he unleashes his atomic breath in Ginza, where he literally obliterates the city in one blast. That shit was insane, and you can tell the main reason Shikishima and especially Noriko survive is plot armor. But I don't mind, because that's one of the only complaints I have with this movie. Godzilla in this movie is such a hateable bastard, Because you have people struggling to survive day by day and trying their best, only for this to decide to rampage and kill everyone for no reason other than an instinct to kill. He doesn't even cause as much chaos just to eat the humans as food, he just does it for the hell of it. But sometimes you don't need a nuanced or interesting character as a villain. Sometimes you can have a giant Komodo dragon with Chernobyl in its stomach, and that's enough. This movie is so heartfelt and emotional, and it puts the bullshit that Hollywood's been putting out to shame. 9.5 out of 10, can't recommend enough.
ゴジラ-1
Would like to say real quick that it's interesting that a movie where the main villain is a metaphor for the atomic bomb and how horribly it impacted the residents of Japan at the time came out 5 months after a biopic on the creator of the atomic bomb. Just thought that was interesting. So yeah, those were my favorite movies that I saw last year. To be honest, I didn't watch anywhere near all the movies I wanted to, so this list would have probably been way longer if I checked out more movies I was interested in, like Creed 3, John Wick 4, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, The Iron Claw, The Holdovers, or the Mario movie. But the movies I did watch were pretty damn good, and I think this is a pretty solid list. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, is that 2023 had some pretty good movies. But Spider-Verse was easily the best, so you should watch it if you haven't. Like, subscribe, do all that YouTube shit, and I'll see you in the next one.